Hey, sports fans, there, Eder, RunBlogRun with our program, Socialing the Distance. We're with Sandi Morris, an Olympic silver medalist and the American record holder in the pole vault. Sandi, great to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me in these trying times. I really appreciate it.
You know, one of the things I wanted to compliment you about is I really enjoy what you do with social media. You're engaged with your fans. You put fun stuff up. You show a little bit of your life. How do you juggle showing things to your fans and keeping a private life?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get used to it as someone who's an influencer, knowing, you know, this is the type of thing going on in my life that I want to keep private. And then, you know, I love sharing things like my animals, and my husband Tyrone and I are very out there with our relationship. And there's just certain elements that I'm always sharing lots of, but then there are definitely things that I keep private. And I think as an athlete, you just have to figure out, like, okay, what kind of questions do I want coming at me? Because anything you post is going to, you know, make questions come up, and you just have to be comfortable with, you know, knowing that if you post something, you're going to have to end up telling people more than even what you post, because people always ask questions. So you kind of have to make that evaluation each time you go to make a post. And ultimately I try to decide, you know, is this going to make me feel happy sharing this with my fans? And is this going to make my fans happy? Is it going to be inspiring? So that's kind of how I make that call.
What's more important to you, an American record or a medal?
That's a really tough question. I think they're both very important, but in different ways. You know, I've had the question come up before, like, if you could choose the world record or an Olympic gold medal, but you could not have both, which one would you pick? And I think most people would say the Olympic gold medal, because that can never be taken away from you.
Sure.
But ultimately, let's say I end my career as an Olympic silver medalist, but I broke the world record. And even if it was for a short period of time, could say I was the best pole vaulter to ever walk the earth. I think I would pick that, because I personally want to jump higher than anyone has ever jumped. Not to say that I wouldn't be completely happy with being an Olympic gold medalist and not ever reaching the world record, but I think I would be more disappointed in that than vice versa. So for me personally, just jumping the absolute highest I physically can means the most to me.
Are you a highly competitive person?
I'm very competitive. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to win. And things that I know I'm good at, I'm especially competitive in. But then I know my boundaries. Like, if, you know, my husband would laugh if he watches this interview, because I'm really terrible at most ball sports. Like, if it's not something I grew up doing, I'm pretty bad at it. For example, soccer. I can't kick a soccer ball for the life of me. So I'm not necessarily super competitive in soccer because I'm pretty bad at it. But I think most people they tend to be drawn to things they're good at. But at the same time, I like a good challenge, even in things I'm not so great at. It just kind of depends on what mood I'm in.
Doha was, to an outside viewer, a highly competitive competition. When I tried to describe the pole vault to non-track and field fans, the best way that I talk about it is a chess game in the air. Because I'm watching, like, when you're competing against, like, Sidorova, which heights you guys miss, when you miss them, how you miss them, if you're going for the win or you're going for a medal. What were you going for in Doha?
I would say Doha was the first competition of 2019 where I really felt like myself on the runway that year. I was coming back from an ankle surgery that I had in October of 18. And so 2019, I was trying to jump on new poles, longer poles. I was kind of using it as like, okay, I've got one more year until Tokyo. Little did I know I would have 2 years until Tokyo. I want to try to figure out how to get my grip higher. So I've been working on that. And I had actually made my approach 2 strides longer because I couldn't quite push off of my surgical ankle. It hurt to do so. So I needed more steps. But before Doha, I felt like my ankle was finally healed enough to where I could bring my run back in. I compete and I'm more consistent from a shorter approach. And I did 2 training sessions, jumping at bars, going into Doha. And I was back in my regular approach that I've been jumping from for years. And I decided, okay, we're going to set aside these poles that haven't quite been working, go back to the poles that have worked for me. And I know I can jump high on these poles for Doha. And had those 2 feel-good sessions. And Doha for me was just going out there and competing to the best of my abilities and finally like getting that edge back that I had been missing for the rest of the prior season because of ankle surgery and because of having to change my run and trying to change poles and stuff. So there were a lot of changes going on, and change can be good. But when it doesn't quite work, you sometimes have to set it aside and come back to it later, you know? So, you know, you say that it was like a chess game, but honestly, in Doha, it was pretty straightforward because I was making everything on first attempts and so was Sidorova.
Sure.
So it really didn't become like, there was no passing, there was nothing like that. And for me, that's when competition gets really iffy and strenuous, is when you're having to pass, someone makes on a first, you're in second place. Okay, I'm going to pass now. I don't like all of that. I like when it's simple, easy. And of course my coach does too, because it's easier to coach an athlete who's making heights on first attempts. At the very end, when we were both missed 495 and I missed my 3rd attempt, I knew I was out, and I was watching her about to do her last attempt at 495. And I could just see this, like, and she said this afterward in the press conference, that her coach said, "You have to make this." And I could just hear it because I've been around them and I know it so well. And I could just see it in her eye. Like I knew she was going to make that bar before she even took off down the runway. And then I watched her, and it was a beautiful jump, and she made the bar. And I still walked away that day feeling just so good because I finally felt like myself. And that was the first time, I think, in my career, actually, that I jumped 490 and jumped every height with no misses. I would have to go back and make 100% sure on that. But I don't think, before that day, I don't think I'd ever jumped 90 with no misses. I mean, especially at a championship, obviously. So I couldn't be disappointed in that day. Sure. I did everything I set out to do that day. Was I a little sad that I didn't win? Sure, of course. I'm a competitor, I'm an athlete. But I tend to thrive off of those, I wouldn't say failures. It was like a near miss of the win. And like, I believe in my heart that someday that win will be mine. And when my day comes, I'm going to appreciate it that much more because I've had to take silver, you know, and it's taught me a lot of life lessons.
Do you study your competitors?
I do and I don't. I try not to obsess over my competitors because pole vault is such an individual sport. And I believe in my own physical abilities. I do believe that I have the physical ability to someday break the world record. I know I've been a professional. I guess now this is my 5th year as a pro. And I feel like I'm right on the verge of having another breakthrough just based on some things we're doing in training. And I feel like I'm making that transition to the longer poles. I've been working on that during COVID, everything. It's actually been really nice to have a break from competing, because when you're trying to be ready to go jump high, that actually doesn't leave you much time and room to work on technical things. Because when you make changes, you actually have to go down before you go back up, usually. So I think this was a blessing in disguise for me because I've had time to work on things, and I've been when the shutdown happened in March, that whole outdoor season, all the way up until mid-September, I was still jumping from full approach at home at the facility my dad built for me, and working on stuff from full approach. So I was in jumping condition, but I wasn't worried about competing. And so I was able to mess around with those poles, and it just takes reps to get used to the feel of a different pole.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I've been working on this break.
Where is home?
I'm kind of a vagabond lately. Right now I'm in Arkansas. I have my house here in Fayetteville. And my parents live in South Carolina. That's where we built the pole vault pit.
Sure.
And I went and stayed at my parents for 2 stints. The first stint was 7 weeks and the second stint was 5 weeks.
Okay.
And this was basically because here I normally train at the University of Arkansas. I actually set foot on the Arkansas outdoor track for the first time this week since March. We have not been able to get any track access. So I have strictly been training on soccer fields that I can like community soccer fields, backyard pole vault pits. And I think COVID has really exposed a weakness that track and field has in the US, because so many of us are reliant on the NCAA facilities. And so this is, nobody could have ever predicted this, but we're in a pandemic, and so they're very understandably strict about not allowing people who are not collegiate athletes or coaches to be inside the facilities. And we're still waiting on some answers about whether or not we're going to be able to train at our indoor track, which just so happens to also be under construction right now. So they're resurfacing it, and the rubber got stuck at the border in Canada, so it got delayed. And now the Arkansas indoor track we're hoping will be done sometime between December 1st and January 1st. So I'm just really hoping the weather's been nice this week, and I'm praying that it stays nice. So, because now we finally can train at the outdoor track at a different time as all the collegiate athletes. So as long as we don't go in the locker rooms or anything like that, and we don't interact with them, we're allowed to use the outdoor track. So, but it's been really hard, and I can't use the weight room at Arkansas. I've had to purchase all of my weights I'm lifting in my garage. So it definitely has made me appreciate the kind of facilities that I've had for the last 8 years here.
Talk to me about the pandemic. I'm going to throw a couple questions at you. What's been the toughest realization about the pandemic?
Just that it's out of our control, really, is what it feels like, at least out of my control and out of the athlete's control. All we can do is keep training and stay safe to the best of our abilities. But it's really hard to, normally as an athlete, when your competitions are going to be, you plan for them, you train for them, you set up your cycles for them. And right now I'm planning for an indoor season, but now, a lot of places in Europe, like the UK, they're going on another lockdown. The spikes are happening all over the place. And our season could just disappear again. So all of that uncertainty can be, it's really hard to swallow as an athlete, because that's what we live for. We live for the competition. So that's been the hardest part, is just mentally accepting that the meets may or may not happen, but we have to train anyway. And trying to set up our training to be prepared for anything is pretty difficult. So that's definitely the hardest part, is how do you be prepared for the unknown?
What has been, what were your first thoughts when you heard Tokyo was canceled?
Well, definitely mixed emotions. I felt like it was the only decision that could be made, and it was definitely the right decision. And as painful as it was, I kind of knew it's gonna get postponed. Like, there's nothing humanity can do right now other than move it and hope that we can figure this virus out by the time next year rolls around. But we still haven't figured anything out. So I'm, there's still so much uncertainty around all of it. But I think what's helped me through it is just, I feel closer to other athletes than I've ever felt just through social media. Like I see everyone else out there going through the same thing that I am, lack of facilities. A lot of places are a lot more strict in lockdown. I'm totally doing fine here in Arkansas. At least I can go outside and train on a field and exercise. So I just have to keep on the bright side and I think just being in touch with other athletes on social media and know that it feels like we're going to get through this together. We've banded together type of thing.
How many competitions did you do this year?
Do you want to count the 2 that I held on my own pit that I built? I did 2 meets at home.
Okay.
I was trying to do anything that I could.
Yeah.
But I did the meet that Drake Relays held. They didn't call it the Drake Relays. I can't remember what they called it.
The Blue Oval? Was that the Blue Oval?
Yeah, the Blue Oval Invitational, I think.
Yes.
So I did that one. I did the virtual meet that the Zurich Diamond League held, the Inspiration Games down in Florida. And then 2 meets that I held at my pit. And that's really it for outdoor season, at least. Yeah. I'm very, very glad that I did indoor season this year. And I had a really solid indoor season back in like February. And because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have really had a season, And I did have the opportunity to go to Europe for at least one competition this past summer, but I just didn't see the risk versus reward being worth it. Like the travel to get out there was going to be miserable. It was going to be, traveling during a pandemic to Europe, I was unsure about all of that. And it was just a lot to go to one competition on top of I was settled in at my parents' working on stuff in training that I really wanted to try to hammer out because I thought I've just been given the gift of time and I feel like I'm ready for that breakthrough and I just need reps on these poles and I need that confidence. So whenever this season does start for my first competition, I'm picking up those longer poles and I'm going to stick with them. They're going to be it. I'm going to make it work. And I feel like it's just the reps I need to get used to the timing of it.
How old were you when you started the pole vault?
I was in 9th grade. I think I saw the event for the first time in 8th grade. I think I got 2 lessons or so, kind of the summer between middle school and going into high school. And at that point, I had been running track. I've run track since I was 7 years old, but I did the sprints, I did the long jump as a kid. And then mostly the 100-meter hurdles was my main event. And I did the 100 hurdles and then I picked up the pole vault in high school. And those were my 2 focuses throughout high school. And I would say sophomore year of high school is when my pole vaulting abilities kind of matched my hurdle abilities. And then junior and senior year, it definitely surpassed my hurdling abilities. And I thought, I guess I'm going to pursue pole vaulting in college instead of hurdling, which is what I initially thought I was going to go after. So, but that was also opportunity. I had a solid pole vault coach, a club that I went to in high school, but I didn't really have a hurdle coach in high school. I was just kind of going off of what I'd learned from a hurdle coach that I went to in middle school. So, it's also opportunity.
Well, if you were talking to a group of high school girls and they were getting interested in the pole vault, what would you tell them was the difference between pole vaulting in high school and pole vaulting in college?
It's definitely more serious. There's definitely a pole vault culture that kind of happens at high school clubs, and I love it. It's fun, and I think it's a great way to get kids into the pole vault. But then once you go to vault for university, I think you become less of just like a pole vault club athlete to like you're on a track team. And they might have you work out with the sprinters. They might have you go run hills with the 400 runners, and I'd say it definitely becomes more serious. And obviously it depends on what university you go to, who your coach is, what the culture is like. but just all around NCAA, especially if you go D1, it's very serious, and you have to be ready for going from the type of like fun-loving culture you get with the pole vault family. Like at the pole vault summit, it's all fun-loving. We all just have a great time. We're out there pole vaulting. And I feel like one thing that changes between pole vaulters in high school to pole vaulters in college is in high school, I think a lot of them, they don't run enough. They don't train enough. Like a pole vaulter is a sprinter and a jumper who also pole vaults, if that makes sense. Like I think a lot of high school pole vaulters lack the sprint training. And I see high schoolers who have pretty great pole vault form. I'm like, that's great, but you need to go run hills. You need to go do sprints. So I'd say that's the main difference. It's just the training and the intensity, and more focusing on getting the athlete strong and fast versus only like just pole vaulting yourself into shape versus doing workouts to get into shape.
Give me 3 things that you love about being a pro athlete.
What's not to love about being a pro athlete? It's great. I think number 1 is I get to stay in shape for a living. You know, most people can barely find time to go get a 30-minute workout in, and I get to mold my entire lifestyle around being strong and healthy. And it is fun being athletic. Like, just you're able to do everyday tasks so easily. And I'll see someone, you know, struggling to walk up the stairs wherever I am, and I think how blessed I am to be so fit, and just everyday life is just easy, you know, and that's because I'm blessed with being an athlete and I get paid to do it. And that's fantastic. I'd say second is just the web and the family that you get built around you as an athlete, and the support you get from your community is you can't compare it to anything. Athletes are loved. We are looked up to. But on the flip side, that does come with a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility. So I would say that can be the hard part is, you know, you're under a microscope, and that's where I think talking with, you know, therapists and having a sports psychologist and all of that can really help an athlete deal with it, because it can be a lot of pressure and a lot of people who are counting on you. But I try to focus on the fact that they're not necessarily counting on me. They believe in me and they support me. And you have to look at it that way, the positive side. And a third thing, I mean, I get to fly in the air for a living. You know, I get to jump on sticks for a living. A lot of people don't even realize you can do that for a living. So I don't have to go sit at a desk all day. And sure, my job is strenuous and it's stressful and it has its, you know, ups and downs, but definitely a lot more positives than negatives for sure.
Do you keep poles in Europe as well as in the US, or do you have to transport your poles?
I transport my poles, mainly because this has really only become a serious issue in the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years. I have considered getting a set of poles over to Europe, but then there's logistical issues of, okay, where do I store them? How do I then get them from wherever they're stored to the meet? And Sam Kendricks, he's got, you know, Renault Lavillenie stores his poles for him and basically brings the poles to the meets for him. So if you have a friend who can do that for you, then that's one thing, but then you don't always end up going to the same competitions as them. And there's a lot of logistics involved in being a professional pole vaulter. So I think, you know, Sam's got like 3 sets in Europe. So, so he's always, you know, trying to play musical poles with his sets of poles. For me, I would like a set in Europe, but I've been trying to switch to different ones. And so it's like, okay, which ones would I ask for another copy set of these ones or a copy set of those ones? And then I get over there and realize, okay, darn, these aren't working for me. I need the shorter ones today and I don't have them, type of thing. So at this point, because I'm trying to make a transition, I like to be able to pack my poles that I need a week that I know I'm going to need that week,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at home. But I think eventually, once I'm for sure on what my series is, then I can duplicate that series and try to keep a set somewhere in Europe. But it is a lot of logistics to figure out.
I'm going to give you 5 names of competitors, and you're allowed 3 words to describe them. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anzelika Sidorova.
Fierce, silent, and deadly.
I like that. That's good. Katerina Stefanidi.
Consistent, a beast, and intelligent.
Okay. Holly Bradshaw.
I would. Can it be their personality too, or just like?
Sure. Anyway, yeah. No, I'm just fascinated to see what I started doing this early this season, and Mike said, "Larry, you got to stop doing it." So everybody, like I hit Sam yesterday with 5, and it was fun to hear because I observe you with the athletes, right? And I watch your guys' interactions, and I'm sitting there, I'm sitting up in the stands and I'm writing notes down, and I've got my little tape recorder going, wow, look at that, and like I watched Christian Taylor with Pablo Pichardo, and I thought it was going to become a boxing match, and it's fascinating, the interaction, right? So I'm fascinated with the interaction. So with Holly, how would you describe her?
I would say Holly is a sweetheart, very approachable, and also a fierce competitor.
Okay. How would you describe, and then I'll give you one more, Jen Shore.
Jen is, let's see, words. One single word. I would say she is serious. She is impressive, and she can be lethal.
Okay. So here's a confession. I've watched track for 45 years, and I've gone to 10 Olympic Games and 17 World Championships. And I have to admit that a lot of times my favorite competitions are women's competitions. And the reason being is because I believe they compete. And there's it's like, okay, in the distances, a guy's 1500 is they race walk for 2 laps and then they run an 800. Okay. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's really exciting, right?
Yeah.
But like watching men pole vault and women pole vault, the competition is really fierce at times. Mm-hmm. And the level, and it's a competition, not just a physical competition, but a mental competition. It's like watching the shot put, when Kovacs and Krauser, and I'm interviewing Ryan. We're interviewing Ryan this week too. And I love watching these guys because they put everything into it. What is it about? Do you believe that if you were talking to fans who are just getting into track and field, why should they watch women's track and field specifically?
I would say they should watch us because, well, first of all, most of the people watching probably have a daughter, and you want to show them that whatever they're doing matters. And I think that that's really important to show little girls, like, you doing a sport is important. It's impressive. I mean, if you think about the things that female athletes have been able to accomplish, it's nothing short of impressive. The history of women's sports has proven the world wrong. At one point, the world thought that women could not pole vault, that it would hurt us, that we were physically incapable. And now women are close to jumping 17 feet. And I think we will very soon as a whole. And it's exciting. I would agree with you. Something about the mindset of a woman, I think it's even deeper than just sports. Women, I think we are so competitive because we have been marginalized for so long that we are all out there to prove ourselves, and we want to be taken seriously. And so I think if you've noticed that difference between male competitors and female competitors, I would bring it all the way back to that. We are competitive by nature, and we are also competitive with one another in a lot of ways. And I think that is an evolutionary thing, a survival thing, but also, like I said, societal. We are out there to prove that women are powerful, that we can do this, and we are exciting to watch compete.
Do you think that the women's pole vault is given by the global organizations, World Athletics, European Athletics, USA Track and Field, the opportunities to promote itself?
I would say the flaws lie more within how track and field is presented as a whole, not necessarily an issue specifically with women's pole vaulting. I actually feel like my event is by nature, I think the pole vault is one of the most exciting events, and it's also one that can stand alone. That's unique in a sense. We can have street competitions, and it can stand on its own. Like, I believe that even if track and field stopped existing, the pole vaulters, we are such a community, and our event can stand on its own. So we would find a way to make our own circuit. I believe that, just a pole vault only circuit, which already exists. I mean, I go to just as many pole vault only meets as I do track meets that have pole vaulting. As for, do they do a good job of, are you speaking, what opportunities are you speaking on? Like how it's presented in the media, or? I
think how, well, for example, like I loved, was it 17 in Zurich at the Weltklasse when they had the women's competition on the train, in the train stadium.
Train station, yeah.
Yes, train station. And there was a crowd that was totally into it, you know. And I've been to a couple other, like in Hengelo, they would do a shot competition in the center of the town. Everybody drank beer, you know. And I remember going to some of Bob Fraley's events back in the 90s, you know, when down in Fresno, I think, where they would have some of the pole vault competitions and stuff. So those are things that I think are really important. And my contention, I wrote a piece about 10 years ago where I said the women's pole vault saved the men's pole vault, because at the time the men's pole vault was getting really boring. And now you've got, like you have, you know, yourself and Katerina and several of the other, you know, women stars. You've got Sam, you've got Mondo, and you've got all these characters, you know. Gives me something to write about, gives us something to interview. So I think those are important. Do you believe that the money is following? And I know money's not everything, but unfortunately in this society, if I say that, well, there's a pole vault and they're giving $5,000 away, and people go, wow. And then you know, if there was a pole vault where a world record was set and someone gets $50,000, wow, people just go, man, that's big, you know?
Right.
So how do you believe the money is following the stature of the event?
I mean, of course, I'm going to say track and field deserves more money as a whole. Like, I'm biased. Of course, I feel that way, especially when you compare it to the big sports, football, basketball, baseball. But I think the money will come if we're able to just market the sport properly and get it. I truly believe people become a fan of what is easily accessible to them. And the fact that my own mom has to scour the internet to find the live feed for anything. Now it has gotten better, I would say, with the NBC Gold package. That's amazing. But still, you have to pay $50 to watch these meets. Whereas I'm like, why isn't this always being broadcast on NBC or something?
Sandy, I think what we were talking about is your mom trying to find ways to watch you pole vault. And you were talking about, you were talking a little bit about, you know, you had the gold package. Yeah, you know what I have, my confession is I get on YouTube and I found a Russian TV station, a Swedish TV station, a Polish TV station, and I put them on the background while I'm editing. And I put out like, there is a Russian group that puts all your pole vaults there's 2 hours of pole vaulting. They get the old feeds.
Really?
And they put up all the stuff from Diamond League from 19 and then all the championships. And so I will put them in the background because I was watching Birmingham, right? And the indoor. And so it gives me a chance then to see each one of your jumps, right? And see how the stuff is playing out. Like I wanted to tell you that in 19, I went through the whole World Indoor Tour. And
wow.
I'm sitting in Madrid, and I'm in the stands with there was the long jump and the pole vault, and it was the women's vault that night, and Sidorova was there. And her coach, who was a real character, and her trainer were there. And then there was a Cuban trainer. And so I'm watching all these guys work with their athletes, which is really fascinating. I mean, when I coached, I did distances. I had a couple decathletes, so I had to learn how to coach the vault. I'm fascinated with how coaches interact. And Sidorova and her coach have this fascinating interaction, as you said, right? You know, but I go to these small meets so I can see those things because at a big competition, I'm nowhere near the coaches, right? You know,
right?
And I'm looking at them in binoculars, and it's just that's the kind of thing, you know. So it's like when you go to a big event and your competition is over, do you go watch some of the other events?
Honestly, the pole vault is normally the very last thing going on, so typically I don't get to. Yeah. But if it's a 2-day event for some reason, like let's say it's the Olympics, then or World Championships or something, I'll go if it's after. But I swear it always ends up that the pole vault is just towards the very end or like on the last night, and I never get to go watch anything. But I'm always watching on TV, even from my room. I do watch on the TV, the coverage.
Okay, we got 2 more questions.
Okay.
What is the difference between competing in an Olympic Games and competing in a World Championships?
I mean, honestly, there's really not much of a difference, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like especially in outdoor World Championships, as long as all the big key players are there and like, you know, a key player isn't hurt or something, it feels very similar. There's just not the weeks of hype built up to it. You know, World Championships is more of obviously it's just track and field. So only the track world really is aware that it's happening or going to happen. So I would say just the mindset going into it can be different because it's been hyped. The Olympics have just been hyped for so long, and there's just so many people watching but it's when you get out there, when you step on that field, it's usually the same competitors that I've jumped against a number of times. And that's how I try to treat it. Now, I've only been to one Olympics, you know, I've been to multiple World Championships, but I still remember the Olympics vividly. And it was the same women that I've jumped against many times. And I think that's important. You know, I think it's so important to go do the Diamond League and do as many big meets, compete against your toughest competitors as often as you can, because that is the best training there is. Nothing can replace that.
Will we see you compete till 2028?
I sure hope so. My goal is to go as long as my body allows me, and it would mean a lot to get to retire on U.S. soil and have that be my last Olympics. So fingers crossed. Okay. Stay healthy, pay attention to my body, take it 1 year at a time.
Sandi Morris, it's always fun speaking with you. You're always great in the pressers. You're patient with media questions, even after you've had a long competition. You know, we record, my son and Mike and I record all the medal, pressers, because, I'll sit in there and it's a chance to really ask some good questions. But you've always been really good there too. And I appreciate that. And I know that's at the end of a long and grueling competition, you don't really want to talk to anybody. You just really want to go back and, relax a little bit. But thank you again for this afternoon. You survived 40 minutes, and we'll have this up next week. I'll send a link to you, and then we're going to be doing clips too. Okay?
Okay.
And
thank you, guys.
Thanks again, Sandi. This is
Yep.
Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. Thanks to Mike Deering, who's producing all this for us. This is our Socialing the Distance program. We're with Sandi Morris, Olympic silver medalist, American record holder. Sandi, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is our program, Socialing the Distance, but this is your favorite program, the Epilogue, because it's really a monologue where Larry talks and talks and talks and talks. Anyway, our featured athlete this week was Sandi Morris. Sandi is an Olympic silver medalist, world championship silver medalist, and American record holder in the pole vault. She is also one of the most astute athletes, I believe, in the land of social media. And I started the conversation with, how do you know what to reveal to the media and to your fans? And what's the line between private life and the world of athletics? I remember Rupert Murdoch saying years ago that when he was told there was 504 television stations, and he said, well, there's 504 opportunities to be mediocre. And that's true. Now you've got virtually gazillions of YouTube. I don't even know what the number is on YouTube channels. And I look at them as all little bitty TV stations, and some of them are better than others. I know that there's a goldfish that dances to the Macarena somewhere on YouTube or Reddit, right? And there's millions of people who have watched it. Now, just because millions of people watch something doesn't make it good, all right? Think about early Netflix and, the stuff that was on there. And now, like right now I'm watching The Crown, Young Wallander. What else are we watching? Just finished Gilmore Girls. Yeah, I watched all the episodes of that with my girlfriend, which was interesting. And I actually enjoyed it. And then been watching some great programming, but it's the quality of the programming. And what we're trying to do with RunBlogRun is develop higher quality programming. And so yesterday we had Sam Kendricks on. Today we have Sandi Morris. And we talked to Sandi about competing in Doha. She said, I thought it was more of, when I do a general description for the pole vault, which I say is a chess game in the sky. But the truth is this, is that sometimes it's just, okay, this is what I did. This is what you did. This is what I did. This is what you did. And in Doha, Sandi Morris and Anzelika Sizarova went jump for jump until they got to, I think, 495. And Sandi missed her three, and then Sidorova made her third one. Sandi told me she was observing Sidorova's coach, who just looked at her and said, you have to make this jump. Now, I had been in that situation watching Sidorova's coach back in February of 19 in Madrid at the Little Indoor there, which fantastic facility, seats about 2,000 people. And I was sitting with the coaches and was watching Sidorova's coach and trainer talk to her through the competition. It was fascinating to watch and helps give me kind of some background on how athletes operate and deal in the heat of competition. Sandi has dealt with an ankle injury, which has gotten better. But what it's done, it's affected her run-up, and she's added a couple steps to take a little bit of pressure off the ankle. By Doha, she was feeling pretty good. In 2020, she had a pretty full, pretty complete indoor season. But outdoors, she competed 2 times in her backyard, and she had a meet down in Florida, the virtual Weltklasse, and the Blue Oval. So not a lot of competitions for someone who probably averages 35 indoors and outs during a year. So she's been working on making herself a better vaulter this year. And you can see that the pandemic has affected her and has affected her in several ways. One of them was when she's in Arkansas, where does she train? Because the university's been closed down since March. And the first time she got on the outdoor facility was literally this last week. The indoor facility, well, the lovely track, which it sounds to me like it's Mondo, coming down from Canada, from Quebec probably, got stuck at the border. And it's going to be late too, but are they going to be able to train there? Don't know. So how do you train over the winter? That's going to be a challenge. And that's what athletes in every event are dealing with right now. It was interesting how Sandi described a pole vaulter, a sprinter and a jumper who vaults. She said if she was talking to a group of high school girls, she'd tell them, work on your leg speed, do hill repeats, build up your strength and speed, because that's what you need. And that's what most of the European athletes get. Some of the Americans do. I think some of the Americans sometimes don't like to do the core work and the overall fitness work. From medicine balls to kettlebells, all that stuff works and it's important. We talked just a bit about 2020 being postponed, which was a challenge for her, and it still remains a challenge because we're hoping for an event, but what's going to happen next year? What's going to happen in 2022? I'm pretty sure things will be okay in 2022. I still believe, and I'm trying to be reasonable, that 2021 is going to be a challenge as well. And I hope it's not going to be worse than 2020. But right now it's starting out pretty rough. Europe's going back on a lockdown again. Italy just closed 6 regions and is controlling travel within those regions and without. The UK is on a 4-week lockdown, and there's rumors that it's going to go longer. Germany's looking at a lockdown, and several countries in Europe are going to. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get something going in the U.S. too. We're dealing with our little election over here right now, and I just hope everybody can get along. That's all I have to say about that. Sandi Morris is a competitor. She likes to compete in everything. She kind of focuses her competition on things she's good at, talking about she's not very good with throwing balls and playing soccer and stuff like that. But what she's good at, she competes and competes very hard. I look forward to seeing her next year in 2021 competing. She always does a great interview, and most of the time we see her at award ceremonies, and she is one of the most talkative and vocal of the medalists. But she's also been a fine medalist too, so that keeps it pretty cool. The women's pole vault is a highly competitive event. You know, you've got Anzelika Sidorova of Russia. You've got Katerina Stefanidi, Greece. You've got Sandi Morris and Kati Nagiot of the U.S. and Jen Shur of the U.S. You've got a global event. You've got fine Chinese vaulters as well. And the event has continued to rise. I mean, I remember Stacy Trigila in 2000 in Sydney, who started out as a heptathlete and a gymnast and became a pole vaulter and an Olympic gold medalist. And also probably one of the greatest vaulters ever. But she really pushed the vault into a whole new place. Women's vault became very popular. But I want to leave you with a little anecdote. Back in 1992, when I was publishing American Athletics magazine, before we had changed the name to American Track and Field, we had Carla Borovica on the cover. She was a steeplechaser, and she ran in a women's steeplechase in 1992, and I think it was at the U.S. Champs. And I put her on the cover, and I got a lovely note from a college coach who was gently chastising me and said, "Larry, you put a woman steeplechaser on the cover. What are you going to do next? Put a woman pole vaulter on the cover?" It was 4 years before we put a woman pole vaulter on the cover, I believe. I'll have to go back and check. But we did put women pole vaulters on the cover because, like all events, they all deserve to be on the covers. And that was a big challenge when you're doing the quarterly magazine. But Sandi Morris is an example, again, of athletes who give to their sport, who love their sport, know they're very lucky doing the sport that they do. I think those things are all pretty cool, and I think those things are all very exciting. And wanted to thank Sandi again for giving us some time today. Want to thank Mike Deering for producing this, and also when, or you might not even notice it, when our interview crashed, I had to go back and get the router working again. We came back on and we chatted for a little bit. I think we ended with talking a little bit about TV. I encourage people to check out YouTube. We have all our videos up there, and there's all kinds of other athletic videos as well. If you like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Please, please, if you love us, subscribe on the YouTube. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. We're with the program Socialing the Distance. We featured Sandi Morris, Olympic and world champ silver medalist, and she is also the American record holder in the pole vault. Sandi, thank you. And thank you to our viewers and readers and listeners. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.